wax. Now the reason I think that Wayne preferred the high temperature wax, and the reason it works well, is we put these parts in the oven to cure before we take the mold apart. This wax so far has been wonderful on releasing parts. Available again from George Spar Aerospace Composites. In fact, all the material we have, the carbon, everything except the resin, is available from George Spar. Information for anybody that needs it. And George, by the way, is excellent with tech help. A good friend of mine, I taught his son to fly years ago when his son was the junior national champion in 1982 or 83. Shows you how good my memory is. Anyway, always helpful if you're interested in any kind of molding technology. George Spar Aerospace Composites. Anyway, this part needs to be extremely clean because these parts come right down like a vise. Even a little dot on here gets the clearances wrong. So again, I'm real careful. I don't want to scratch it. You can see all the stuff that actually does those little resin deposits. Now I'm not going down into the part. Again, it's preparing and cleaning this up that results in having that really nice finish on a part too. So it allows the mold to close perfectly then instead of almost perfectly. And about every 5 times I'll clean all this off the side of the mold. But the point is too, once you have a good quality tool, forever and ever and ever and ever, you can make parts. Once you have a mold for any part and it's polished and you're getting parts releasing, it's the last time you ever have to make that part other than just mold up another one. From this point on, I like to take all the safety precautions. I have a fan going for ventilation. I have an air conditioner going to keep the shop as cool as possible. The cooler it is in your shop, the more work time you have with the resin. If you have a shop where it's 72 degrees, that's good. If you can get it to 70, even better. If you can get it to 68, at some point in time you'll have a little extra work time. And this resin, the more work time you have, it just makes it easier and easier to use. Now I've used several different, in the course of learning the little tips of the molding operations here, several different tricks, several different PVA for one, silicone release agents from Smooth On. They all work in their own way, but this is by far the best one. Now typically what you do is you wax a part, make sure you get a good thin coat, buff it, polish it. Well, there's several ways they even tell you to do it on the can, but the best thing is to make sure you don't have any spot on a whole mold that doesn't have wax, or else you will not be able to get the resin off easily. So even over this old resin and everything, I try to get a coat of wax because this is going to ooze resin when we're done. There's just no way you can make this neat and easy. Now, I usually would put on a new mold, I'd put 4 coats. I'd wait an hour. I'll buff this off about a minute later. Give it about 60 seconds. Wait an hour, give it another coat, and then repeat that cycle about 4 times. But once a mold gets used and it's not green anymore, what happens is you can get away with 2 coats or maybe even 1 coat. Now in this case, this is the part that's going to be the most difficult to get out. The shells will just come apart, the end cap, but this part is the one that I don't give it 4 coats of wax. I always give it that extra time. Now the way you know that it's drying up real nice is you can just sit just like buffing out a plane. You can take one little spot and really get it nice. As soon as you see you've got that nice high gloss on it, and you can see that, you just need to do the whole part. And now this prepping operation can just take time. There's no way you can speed this up that I know of. And if you take that chance of not getting enough wax on everything, you run the risk of losing the money you've paid for the tooling. So this part of it, this is the one part, if you're new to molding, you just can't skip this part. This part It's always, you want to get busy and you want to go do it. But what I do, because I always schedule my work, what I do, and it's a good way to do this, is while one coat of wax is drying and I'm waiting for the next coat, I can cut all the material for the next operation. And that usually takes 10 or 15 minutes. But if it's a new mold, give it that 4 cycle, an hour apart. And even then they recommend letting it dry overnight on the first pull. But this is the part that I don't want to have any chance. Now I'll do the rest of them off camera, but it's just labor intensive. Wax on everything. I like to wear rubber gloves because what happens is my hands get so dried out from alcohol and acetone and different things that when I get a little cut, I don't want to get wax, I don't want to get resin. You actually should, from this point in the job on, always be wearing rubber gloves. You never want to get this resin. It's Epon. You don't want to get that resin. It's the same resin they make propellers out of. That resin is not, it's not good to breathe it. It's certainly not good to get it on your hands, and as soon as you're done with the layup, you want to get it out of your shop. You don't want to sit and let that cup with extra resin just sit on the workbench. Get everything outside. In fact, as soon as we really get to a little bit better weather in the season, we're going to be working out in the garage. We're going to try to set up a molding area so we don't have to even do this in our shop. But we do the, while the resin is exposed to the air, keep that time to a minimum. One example of something that's important is all the little radiuses here. And even though I've not cleaned this, I try to get wax on everything because eventually at that 5th pull or 6th pull, I want to get some of this, I'll want to get it cleaned up. I don't want to turn it into, you know, the Howe Caverns or something. Anybody that I've ever talked to that's had problems with molds releasing, it's always that they try to rush the preparation or try to, in some way, they try to save time or whatever. And this is the one part of the job. There's parts you can kind of save a little time on, but this is certainly not one of them. Now, I don't want you to confuse, for people that might not be aware of, there are thousands and thousands, maybe even more, formulations of epoxy that are made for specific things, like SIG epoxy glue. All products that are 2 parts and you mix them together are toxic. They're not good for you. In small amounts, they're not going to kill you. Some people are sensitized to it, some people aren't. But there is no such thing as good epoxy. Epoxy is not good to breathe. It's not good to get on your skin. It goes through your skin, certain types. The type that we're using is not really a hobby product. You're not even supposed to be able to buy it. There's only a few places that will even sell it to you without you demonstrating that you're, you know, in compliance with the EPA regulations. So keep in mind, this is not a product that we could make with 5-minute SIG epoxy. You need to have high-tech, very expensive, very specifically formulated epoxy. You just cannot get away with all epoxy is not the same. Now, we also are going to do some tests in the future. Ed Gallagher has sent us some vinyl ester resin that's made specifically for this application, for making fuel cells. And it's very chemically resistant. We haven't tested it yet. But I'm hesitant to change anything that Wayne has come up with because his stuff works perfectly. In his tanks, the ones, I've had one in the plane over a year already, not one bad run yet. The new ones that I've all made in the last 3 months, 4 months, every one has been performing well. So I have no reason to try to reinvent the wheel here. I'd like to get this part of it as reliable as possible, and then possibly over the winter run an experimental part and test it for a season. Okay, this is the material that we use, available from George Spar. And we have a pattern made. After doing this over and over and over again, we just realized the easiest way to do it is to just make a pattern for the parts we're going to need to cut out. Material comes on. This is the 2nd roll we've used. I'm opening the 2nd roll. You've got to really treat it delicately. I've learned the hard way. In fact, just getting a label off, sometimes you can put a big gouge in it.